Okay, so I've had this lock sitting on my bench for a little while now. I've been waiting for some things to arrive, and now that they've arrived, it's time for me to mess with this lock a little bit. So it's, as you can see, and maybe guess, an elevator lock. It's actually from an Otis elevator. It is a interesting little thing that I'd like to have a key for. So let's just explore it a little bit first. Okay, so here we are at the vise, and I'm going to explore this lock a little bit with an idea. There is it's a 5-pin wafer lock. But there is another wafer at the back, at the bottom. I'm going to try and connect with. I'm going to insert this tool somewhere up the front to pull out with. And what I'm going to try and do is lift up this last wafer and extract the core of the plug. So picking wasn't entirely necessary to get inside this lock. So now we've pulled out the plug, let's have a closer look at a couple of things. Okay, so here we are with our lock. As you can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wafers that need to be pushed up into place to be able to rotate the plug. And now if you look at the end here, we see this additional wafer. As you can see here, there's nothing that is to be operated from the top, so you couldn't pick this thing up into place and remove the plug. It needs to be picked up from underneath, which is why I shaped this little device. A little hook at the bottom there, enough length to get down between the wafers, hook under, then lift up to pull that pin up into place. You can see there, get in between the wafers, get under that final wafer and lift it up, and then I use the other device to hook in underneath the top to get a grip on the plug and use that to pull the plug out of the lock. This little wafer at the back here connects in at the end and it locks in on this little lip at the end here. Once it's fully in place, it slips down over this little lip and keeps the plug in place. So I thought that was interesting. If you wanted to bypass this lock, you could just as easily just remove the plug and make yourself a key for it and return at will to operate the lock as you please. And on the subject of making keys, maybe that's where we'll go now. Now, if we're going to make a key, obviously we are going to need a blank that fits this lock. So for this particular Otis elevator lock, it turns out that the correct blank is a Lockwood LW3. There's one here. As you can see, it fits beautifully, but some cuts need to be made. So let's get on to preparing the key blank and think about making a key. Okay, so as you can hopefully see, the bitting surface on the key is a little bit rough, and if I'm wanting to do any kind of impressioning, which is what I'm considering doing, I'm going to want that as smooth as possible so that I can see any of the marks which will be made on the bitting surface by the wafers. So I'm going to grab some maybe 600 or 800 grit and rub that back till she's nice and smooth. Okay, sanding, sanding, sanding. Not a very exciting process, so I won't make you sit through it, but you get the general idea. You just want to take some nice clean sandpaper and make the top of the key blank, that is the bitting surface, nice and clean. And hey presto, we have a nice and clean bitting surface to work with. So now that that much is done, let's move on. Okay, just quickly I'm going to colour, well I've been colouring, but I'm just going to put a bit more down the top of this key blank. Make it look nice and pretty, and maybe help some of those marks be a little bit easier to see. Okay, damn camera wasn't recording. Coated the top of the key blank, the bitting surface of it, with a little bit of colour. Slipped it inside the plug, and holding the wafers down from the top. Just been doing a little bit of jiggling to hopefully make some marks which are going to be recognisable, that we can then use to figure out where to begin filing. So I guess the task is now to see how well that worked out, if at all. Okay, so there are some marks there. Not ideal in terms of their clarity, but it does give us a place to start. So I'm going to grab some files and start cutting in a little bit. Okay, so it's time to do some filing. The key blank is here, ready and still prepared. And what I also have here is a lovely Pippin file from Grobit. It's a number 4 cut, a fine cut, which is exactly what we need. Nice clean marks against which to see any impressioning marks. Now, by Pippin file I mean it's basically a teardrop shaped file. So on one side it has a nice sharp edge, which is great for making really precise initial cuts right on the point where you wish to file. And when you're ready to deepen those cuts and widen them, you can just simply turn the file over and use the wider and rounder side. It's also a nice file because it tapers off to the end here. So again, you have a choice about how wide you want to cut at any different point. So this is going to be tricky to do in front of the camera. So what I'm going to do is grab some magnification. I'm going to use this headlamp magnification, and I'm going to make these initial cuts and come back to you after that. Okay, so I've been doing a little bit of filing at these points. Just giving it a little bit of an extra go. And what I'll do is I'll quickly throw it under some magnification to give you a closer look. So those are the initial marks, and what remains to be done now is to insert into the lock, have a bit of a look at how the wafers sit, and gradually cutting away from the key blank at different points until the wafers are sitting where they need to sit. Okay, so putting the key into the lock, we can see that the wafers are definitely sticking up in 5, 4, 3. Let me look at 2. Hopefully I haven't screwed up there. I'll have to look under magnification. I can see 1 sitting up a fraction. I'm hoping 2's not cut too low already. But what I'm just going to do now is, after checking that I haven't screwed up already and gone too deep on 2, file down a little bit on 1, a little bit on 3 and 4 and 5, and keep coming back to check how that goes. So that's the basic process we're going to go with, and if you bear with me, I'll be back with you in a moment for an update. Okay, back again. Thought I was filming and working away, and guess I didn't hit the record button properly. So just to backtrack a little bit to explain where I'm up to. Turns out that I did screw up, and I made that second cut a fraction too deep. I mean, I hardly cut in at all, but so I just quickly whipped up another, and I'm kind of leaving number 2 cut alone for the moment, and started working on the first position. So I got down to where the first wafer is looking fairly nicely in place. As I said, I'm going to leave 2 alone, and I'm going to keep just working away at 1 wafer position at a time until I get the wafer down to where it needs to roughly be before moving on to the next one and the next one again. And then I'll give the key a bit of a test at the end and see how we go. But just 1 or 2 strokes at a time on the file. I don't want to cut away anything too quickly, so I won't bore you to death with me filing away. No need for that, but I'll update you again. Okay, just a brief update. Here is the key so far, but it's as I'm cutting in deeper here, it's getting a little bit hard to extract the key. So what I'm just going to do is take some of these sharp edges and just use a needle file to round them off a little bit so that the angles aren't too harsh, and therefore they are much more likely to slide by the wafers than to catch on them, because I certainly don't want to get to the point where I put this key rather inside a lock and then have the key get stuck inside the lock. So again, I'm just going to smooth things up a little bit and then continue with the process. Okay, so in filing away, here is the key as it stands. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a smooth over on the sides here, and continue to check it over and make sure there are no sharp points that are going to catch up on any wafers, and put the lock back together, and it's going to be the moment of truth. Will it work or will it not work? It should work. I was fairly careful to make sure that the wafers above and underneath were flush with the sides of the plug. So that's about as much as I can do. I was fairly careful under magnification to double check and triple check everything. So let's see how it rolls. So lock is back together again. Here is the key as it stands. And now the moment of truth. Make sure I put it in properly. Key is in. Dun, 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 dun. Off, on. Start. Fire service mode. And she comes out smooth. So a little bit of extra work to take off the sharp edges was perfect to make sure that it didn't get caught inside the lock. And we now have a working key for this 5-pin wafer lock from an Otis elevator. Giddy up. Alright, that was something different for me. Never impressioned a wafer lock before. I've cut keys for them before. But, yeah. Peace and respect.